We've had the chance to drive this new Nissan Z a number of times and do reviews on the car, but right now I am in Georgia for a Bridgestone tire event and I have the opportunity to drive it. I've actually never been behind the wheel of this car. So in today's video, I want to talk a little bit about the Nissan Z, why we're not seeing tons of them on the road, and also talk about how it drives. So here is the car in question. It's of course the Nissan Z. This is a somewhat retro sports car that Nissan came out with not too long ago, and it's one that we have had the opportunity to drive a little bit before, and there's a number of things that are really important to touch on this car. For one, there is the styling. Now, say what you will about the styling of it. In my personal opinion, I think it's actually a really good looking car. It stands out, especially in this hero color yellow. There are some lines on it that, if you ask me, are maybe a little too sharp, a little too angular, but especially in moving around the back, that sloped roof line, this silver piece of trim, the Z badge here on the pillar, and then these taillights that toss back to the 300ZX back in the day. It's a really cool taillight design. I think from the back, it'd be hard to argue that this isn't a good looking car, because it just is. And there's a few cool Easter eggs around this car too, including that it says since 1969 back here on the rear glass. Now, the reason that we're here driving this Nissan Z is, like I said, because of Bridgestone. They've had us out so that we can test their Potenza line of tires, and these right here are the Potenza Sports. They're pretty similar to the tires that come on this car from the factory, but they have a slightly higher rolling resistance, and they're also a little bit more aggressive when it comes to cornering. Also a little bit more longevity than the OEM tire that you get on this, which is a nice combination. So your fuel economy wouldn't be quite as good, but you get a little bit more bite, and that's good for a sports car like this. Now, funny enough, the Z has been around for quite a while, but I've never actually had the chance to drive it. And we're pretty much in the perfect place for me to take this car on a drive, because we're in my hometown. We are in Alpharetta, Georgia. Well, we're near Alpharetta, Georgia. Right now we're at Atlanta Motorsports Park for this Bridgestone Potenza event. And so these are roads actually that I know really well, and they're fantastic driving roads. It's one of the things that I do miss. They're super fun roads to drive out here. And this is also a good car to be in to do this, because I mean, this is kind of what this car is meant to do. It is a sports car. You're supposed to go have fun on good driving roads. And unlike being in Atlanta, there's not a lot of traffic out here either. So initial impressions of the Z, because we're still within the first mile that I've ever driven this car. It's got decent power. The turbo comes on pretty quickly. The steering has a nice weight to it. These roads are very smooth, so it's kind of hard to gauge how the ride is. But so far, it feels like a nice planted performance car, and sounds pretty decent. You know, I mean, it is a 3-liter V6, so it's not like it's not a V8. You're not going to get that same kind of quality of sound out of this engine, but there's a lot of V6s out there, and I would put this toward the higher end of being a good noise. It's got a nice little wail to it. It's not overplayed either. It's not overstated. It's subtle, and I think that's how a V6 should be. Now, something else impressive about this twin-turbo V6 is that it makes peak torque, 350 pound-feet of torque, at 1,600 RPM. So I'm at 3,000 right now, but you feel that push pretty quickly, and then it just has a nice linear build to that 400 horsepower mark that everybody knows this car has. And it makes this a really great car to drive, and I think this is a really underrated car for a couple reasons. I think in part because of pricing. This car costs around $53,000 $2,000, a little over, and that is a lot of money to spend when you could get something along the lines of a Mustang with a V8 for that same amount of money. And those 2 extra cylinders, they do add to the driving experience. So, you know, I think for a lot of people, at least here in the States, that's a mark against this car. But if you live at altitude like we do in Colorado, having a twin turbo V6 instead of something naturally aspirated is really nice, because you're not going to lose as much power moving up in elevation as you would with a naturally aspirated V8. The engine and transmission, everything on this car is really a lot of fun. And funny enough, you just don't see a lot of them on the road. It doesn't seem like they're selling as much as I would have expected. Now, looking at the interior on this car, it's really one of the more impressive parts of it. This is, of course, a 2-seater, so no rear seat, but you do have a pretty large area here in the back where you can put a bag, you can put golf clubs, whatever it is that you're taking with you. And then you've got these 2 front seats. Now, pretty simple seats. There's no crazy stitching, no crazy materials, but they do feel pretty premium and they're nice and comfortable. And one of the great things about this car is that you do sit very low, so you have that go-kart type feel. You've also got a really nice steering wheel here, nice materials, good looking buttons. And if I power the car up, you can see the screens that you get here, both really sharp, good looking screens, especially this instrument cluster screen. Really high resolution, good contrast, and good information that you get here. On the right, you get some very useful gauges for temps, oil pressure, and you also get your tire pressure here on the left, as well as a big tach, gear position indicator, of course your speedometer. So a lot of really good information and displayed really well. The other really cool thing are these gauges up here. Of course, you've got a boost gauge, and you also have a turbo speed gauge, as well as a voltage meter, which, you know, probably isn't necessary to have right there on the top of the dash, because especially this being a brand new car, I mean, eventually it won't be a brand new car, but that gauge on the right is not really going to change a whole lot unless something is going terribly wrong. And then this car is also available with either a 9-speed automatic or the transmission that you really want, which is a 6-speed manual transmission. That's the way to go. Under the hood here, you can see the 3-liter twin-turbo V6, or at least you can see the cover that lives on top of it, because these days you don't really get to see a whole lot of engine anymore, although you can look underneath the cover a little bit there and see some of it. This is rated at 400 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque, so not bad numbers. Now, I said that I would talk a little bit about why these cars aren't selling a ton, why you're not seeing tons of them on the road, and it's like many things, it's because mostly of supply chain issues. That seems to be plaguing a lot of different industries, and the car industry is no different. So it's really not for a lack of this being a great car to drive or people being interested in it, because from what Nissan tells us, the cars that they are building, people are snatching up, but it's just difficult right now for a lot of manufacturers to get vehicles manufactured and out the door. So that's part of the reason that we're not seeing tons of these cars on the road. But if you have the opportunity to go to a dealership, or even if you know somebody that has one, if you have the opportunity to get behind the wheel, I highly recommend it, because it is a really great car to drive. Oh man, that kick of power is nice. Yeah, this is definitely, in my mind, an underrated vehicle. If this is the kind of thing that you're in the market for, that you are considering, I mean, even if you're looking into a Mustang, for example, you owe it to yourself to go and test drive one of these at the very least. Now, of course, plenty of reviews have been out on this car, but I had the opportunity to drive it, so I figured might as well make a video about it and just give you guys an extra perspective. So let me know what you all think down in the comments below. Do you like the new Z? Would you get the Nismo version? And that's all for this video. We'll catch you all in the next. And also a huge thanks to Bridgestone. If you want to see some of the other videos that we're doing with cars at this event, including an NSX Type S a Honda Civic SI race car, and a BRZ on an autocross course, go to alltfl.com, where you can see all of the videos that are coming out of this Bridgestone event. And as always, we'll catch you all in the next video.